Hi, everybody. When you get the opportunity to do a TED Talk, you kind of get some ideas right off the bat on, maybe what you're going to talk about. But what I struggle with, and I think what a lot of people struggle with, is how do I captivate you guys, in the first 30, 40 seconds, right? What am I going to do that? So naturally, I'm going to kind of actually deflect that on you guys a little bit. And we're going to play a little game. And so when I say go, here in a few seconds, you're gonna find someone around you. You're gonna find somebody next to you. And I want you to figure out that person's favorite color. And you're gonna get 10 seconds to do that. But they can't say the name of that color. All right? Seems simple enough? All right. So that was kind of random, right? That was a little weird. What am I trying to get at there? What I want to illustrate to you all is what I like to call the unknown. When we think of life today, we think of kind of the 9 to 5, or the fact that we have the same weekly class schedule every week here at Wabash. Even just the fact that this event was penciled in at 1 p.m. today. A lot of our lives feel pretty structured or rigid. But in reality, a lot of what happens in our lives is super unpredictable. It's stuff that we can't really, plan for. In a couple months, I'm going to graduate, and if there's not an element of uncertainty about that, then I'm not sure where there might be anymore. But my point is, if we're going to talk about this world being unknown, this world that we live in, there's a lot of uncertainty. What do we do? How do we react, or how do we plan for when that uncertainty becomes reality? And that can be scary, right? How do we deal with the fact that that uncertainty, just all out of a sudden is what's happening in our lives, right? And that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Yes, in life, when you have the opportunity to plan, you plan. You plan a schedule, plan a budget, whatever. But the fact is that a lot of the biggest problems that we encounter in life are stuff that we simply can't plan for. It's stuff that's unexpected. And so, what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we can be better at acting on the fly. Acting on the fly, what do I mean by that? When I think of acting on the fly, I think of acting on the fly being pretty synonymous with improvising. So, think about any situation in life, right? You kind of take it at what it is, you figure it out real quick, and then you kind of put a solution out there. Improvising. A real world example that I kind of like to put in my head is if your boss at work were to, kind of call you in their office and they're asking you about some hot topic issue in the company and your opinion on it. You probably didn't expect them to ask you that, but nevertheless, you have to give them an answer. Think about it in the heat of the moment and hope that it's an answer that they actually appreciate. Acting on the fly and improvising is so important, and it's literally 80% of what we do in our lives each and every day, which is why I'm talking about it today and why I hope you guys will get something out of it. So, how many of us, raise of hands, feel like they're a pretty competitive person, right? A lot of us. I'm pretty competitive myself as well. And, where we tend to see competitiveness is when we think of games. So whether that be a board game, video game, sport. When we play games, we get competitive because we want to win. We want to win that game. And for me, that game has always been soccer. Ever since I was 3 years old or however old when I started playing until now, soccer's kind of been my identity. And, I think my teammates that are here today and my coaches can probably attest that sometimes, I get a little too competitive. But it's I like to have fun with it, right? And, just to think back a little bit on this, my coach, Chris Keller, actually had a lot of coaches in high school that were you shouldn't recruit that kid. He's too hot-headed, he's too competitive. And that's fine, whatever. But I think that competitiveness is actually something that I've been able to leverage a lot. Something that kind of drives me a little bit. And unfortunately, when we encounter problems in our lives, I think a lot of the time what the issue is, we get bogged down by the issue. It's like, I can't figure it out. But if you take that competitive mindset and you really, kind of feel like, I'm going to attack this, right? I'm going to figure this out. We could probably have a little bit better results. So my first tip for you all today is to find your soccer. Find that thing in your life, that you really like getting competitive about, something that juices you up. And if you can feel that energy and you kind of find that competitive energy within yourself, who's to say that you can't apply that to when you run into an issue at work and you gotta figure it out. Find that competitive energy, find your soccer. Now, I want to take a second to kind of hype up our career services here at Wabash a little bit. They're first or second every year in the nation in what they do. And part of the reason for that, and I think the biggest thing for it, is they're super, super good at getting students internships here. And, I remember, I was a student. I am a student. I remember my freshman year, I was on some internship panel, or I was sitting in on an internship panel, and there was a company, and I remember listening to them talk, and I was like, if I could intern for them, that would be sick. And, a year or two later, with the help of Wabash and the kind of, some of what I did as well, I made that a reality, and I interned for this company. And, this is kind of like a classic finance, kind of like corporate internship, right? And, nowadays when you hear finance, you kind of automatically think Microsoft Excel. Now, I know Microsoft Excel is probably not the sexiest or heart-wrenching thing you're going to hear at one of these talks today, but I want you guys to just stick it out with me for a little bit, because I think the end point will be important. So picture me, I'm in this corporate internship, whatever, I'm taking a bunch of data, making an Excel model. That's kind of my summer. And, I'm like a month in, and there's this part of the project that, I just had kind of been pushing off. This super technical aspect that, I was like, I'll figure it out later on. And one day, I kind of got called to act on the fly a little bit. And my supervisor wanted to see in a couple hours what kind of progress I had made on that part that I kept pushing off. And if you can kind of envision this a little bit, me sitting in my chair, I kind of just slouched down. I felt defeated. And the reason that I felt like that is because I was so bogged down by the finish line. All I could think about was the end goal. That my internship had to go well, that my project had to go well, that I needed people to like me. Maybe I could get a job out of this. And I'm just sitting there overthinking the problem at hand, right? And all the time while that's going on, in reality, what I'm doing is I'm wasting valuable time that I could have actually been taking action. Taking action that moment to improvise, to figure it out. There's a story called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse that I recently came across. And there's this one part where the boy and the horse are walking through these woods, and the woods are super dark, right? And the horse, or the boy, he's complaining. He's like, I can't see in front of me. I can't see anything. And the horse says, can you see your next step? And as the boy says yes, then the horse says, just take that. See, today when we, run into an issue, whatever it might be, something in our personal life, something at work, we get so bogged down with whatever that issue is. It's too daunting, and we kind of shut down a lot of times. I do it a lot. But what I'm going to ask you guys to do today, and kind of what I'm going to talk about here for my second tip, is instead of focusing on that finish line that I showed earlier, I want you guys to focus on taking steps towards the beginning. If you can, in any conflict or anything that comes up in life, if you can find your ability to just do even just the smallest little actions at the beginning, just the smallest steps, take a few steps, right? Inherently, you kind of make progress towards that goal. So kind of going back to my internship, after I kind of got those jitters out, I watched some YouTube videos on the part that I was struggling with. I talked to some of the younger coworkers I had to see if they could help me out with a little bit. And in seemingly not very much time at all, I actually made a lot of progress on that project, and I kind of came up with something that I was proud to show of. So kind of going with my Excel analogy here today, my second tip is to take it a few cells at a time. When you find yourself in a scenario where kind of having to act on the fly or improvise a little bit, just take it a few steps or a few cells at a time at the beginning, kind of get yourself going a little bit and get yourself in that mindset that you're ready to take action, and the rest will kind of come. Now, let's go back to how I kind of defined acting on the fly as improvising earlier. When we think of improvising, I kind of think of it as being an individualized thing, right? When we think about like having a problem in our life, whatever, I don't automatically, something doesn't happen to me and then I go and I ask somebody else to figure it out for me, right? We kind of like deal with our problems on our own. And that's something I've certainly been pretty guilty of, especially here at Wabash. Whether that be, in a group project gets sprung on me, kind of late notice, and I'm just like, I just want to kind of tunnel vision through and just figure this out all on my own. Or on a more serious topic, something that's really, that we talk about a lot here at Wabash is men's mental health. Unfortunately, men, including myself, when we run into problems, we tend to just kind of internalize it, right? There's resources out there that can help us. There's people out there you can talk to, but no, it's my problem. I'm gonna keep that individualized. Even on my internship that I referenced earlier, I had a ton of smart people around me. I had, plenty of resources, but I still felt alone. I still felt like this was my project, these are my problems, I gotta figure this out. And this individualized mindset, I think it hinders us. I think it hindered me a lot. And so what I'm gonna kind of talk about for my third tip is that yes, a lot of the things we run into in life that we can't control, yes, they kind of affect us personally. But that doesn't mean that you can't leverage resources or people outside to kind of bring that along and kind of make more of an impact. So, I talked in my internship earlier, right? I met some people that helped me out. I read up on some stuff on the internet. Whatever it may be, I was able to leverage resources outside of, kind of my circle to act on the fly and figure out my problem. So that's going to be my third point for today. Leverage those resources. Now, I've given you now 3 points, right? My 3 tips on how we can be better at improvising or acting on the fly. But what I haven't given you yet is somewhere to practice that. Think about if I went and watched a YouTube video on like a soccer move or something. I can't automatically just watch that video and then go do it perfectly in a game, right? I have to practice it at practice. I got to go out to the practice field. So the question is, how can we practice improvising? How can we practice improvising in life when it seems like it's happening all around us anyways? How can we practice for those big moments in life where we're called to act in the heat of the moment? For me, and I think for a lot of people, I think the best place, the best practice arena that we have are new, unfamiliar situations. So let's think about this, right? When you push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, you run into new things all over the place. You run into new stakeholders, new people, new problems, and most importantly, you run into new unknowns. So when you're running into all these new things, you kind of have to, act on the fly a little bit. You have to figure it out. And when I was thinking about, my time at Wabash here, I was fortunate enough to be one of the captains of our soccer team this year. And, I've never been a captain before. That's not something I have always done. And with that came a lot of problems. A lot of things I had to figure out. How do you lead effectively? How do you figure out a problem on the field while the game's still going on? Learning that and by putting myself in a new scenario, I inherently gave myself an ability, or in a practice arena, to kind of try it out a little bit more. So as I close today, I encourage you guys to kind of go out and find your ability to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. Because by doing so, you'll find an arena where you can find your soccer, you can take it a few cells at a time, and finally you can find an opportunity to leverage those resources. And by doing that, you'll find yourself able to take on those problems when they come your way, however big or small, and be better at acting on the fly. Thank you.